This is something that I'm super passionate about. I think that one of our greatest superpowers is understanding who we are to our core, the good, the bad, the ugly. How do you utilize it to move forward? And I think this is one of the greatest things. Like, the pandemic has taken a lot of toll on us from a mental and an emotional perspective. This is one of the ways that we can kind of re-grab exactly what we need and what we need to move forward in life, and just really figure out what's going to set our soul on fire to make us the absolute best people possible to come out of this. Really just, I think the series is called Bursting Through the Walls of Mediocrity. And that's exactly what we're doing. We're going to burst through that. And it all starts with you. So I'm really excited to share this with you. Again, please ask questions. I will give you the most, I'll give you the most authentic answers possible. And let's dive in. So with that, we'll start screen sharing. All right. Gotta love my technology piece. Where's my slideshow button? Sorry, guys. There we go. And we're off. No, we're not. It's always something, right? There we go. All right. Can we see? Beth, I can see your face. So can you smile and nod if I'm good? All right. So we are going to take a mirror approach. And the big thing about taking the mirror approach is you got to look at yourself. And this is the fun thing where, I've taken a lot of time. We're going to talk a little bit about the shadow self and understanding that some of the things that might be dark in our world are actually things that are really necessary for us to continue to be who we are and to make us thrive in the environments that we are. So with that, we will get moving. So today we're going to discuss why this matters. Like, why does it matter to know who you are at your core, of understanding like the basics of what we need and who we are as a human being and what characteristics make us who we are. This helps us from a leadership perspective in working with groups, of helping understand one another, helps relate to your partners or your friend circles, any community involvement or philanthropy. And also just how do you work in teams? Like, how do you surround yourself? When we look at what is your tribe or who is your board of directors, these are the things that help you understand why you're attracted to certain people or their energy, but also helps you understand what you bring to the table to help people along the way with whatever they're going to be pursuing. I have a friend named Tyler Kamerman who is doing a podcast called Pursuing Your Passion. And that is something that we will also give in a resource. But this is where you find these people that help you figure out what's your purpose and your mission in life and how are you going to get there. And if nothing has happened in the past 2 years, the pandemic moving into 3, a lot of us are trying to rethink, like, what are we doing? Are we making an impact? Is it a substantial enough impact? And do I want to keep going along this path? We all have our personal board of directors, whether you've realized it or not. You've got your people that you surround yourself with. And a lot of times, these are the people that are very different from you, or they see things from a different perspective than you do. And it's important to always reach out to them to help give you that whole 360-degree view in that world type of dynamic. But they also don't necessarily just tell you all the good stuff. You got to actually hear the ugly stuff sometime. I think Michelle Green from NARS, love her dearly, always talks about you called somebody's baby ugly. It's not necessarily the greatest thing in the world, but we got to know. Sometimes you just got to know. So with that, today we're going to dig in. I'm going to give you a ton of resources that I would like you to, if you're going to come along for this journey with us, please utilize these resources. If you attended the Positively You retreat at the beginning of January, some of these might look familiar. So thank you to Yvonne for the character assessment, because we're going to re-dig into that today. But also we're going to take a look at a couple other mediums. And I would love if you have any recommendations of assessments that you have done in the past, please throw them into the chat so that we can all collectively learn better as a whole. This community learning is all about learning from each other and sharing our stories. And today we start with taking a reflection upon ourselves. I'm going to give you a lot of questions. You do not have to answer all of these questions now, but I do challenge you to take the time to answer. One of the reasons that we don't take a really solid look at who we are from the mirror approach is because it takes time. It takes time to get quiet, to get clear, and to really dig into who are you? What do you want? And one of the easiest things that we should be able to answer is to be able to say, what do we want? And it's a very hard question. It kind of reminds me of The Notebook when Noah is yelling at Allie and he's like, what do you want? You should be able to answer that. So we're going to start out first. So if you have your paper and you have your Word document, whatever it is, for the next 2 minutes, I want you to write down all of your accomplishments and everything that you are proud of about yourself. You get 2 minutes to write as much as possible about what makes you awesome. And you don't have to share this, but I want you to really think about what makes you amazing and what have you accomplished that makes you proud of yourself. You have 2 minutes, go.
Quick question, Claire. Is this for personal or professional?
Yes, you can, it's whatever you want. You can do
Okay.
either or, but this is your time to brag about yourself to yourself. So this is kind of one of those things that I would consider it like if you're writing a letter to your best friend to tell them all the great things about them, except that your best friend is you. And at the end of 2 minutes, I will ask you to write one in the chat that you would not mind sharing with the team. All right, you've got about a minute. All right, I hope your brag book looks fantastic. If it's blank, we've got some work to do. So talk to me afterwards. Now, if you are comfortable, share one thing in the chat. Let's celebrate each other's wins. Mari, I'm gonna let you monitor the chat for this one for me. Thank you. Thank you, Pamela, for sharing. Oh, nice job. Oh, these are great. Ooh, division athlete, nice. And if you don't want to share, that's totally fine too. But this is really nice. It's nice to celebrate each other's wins. So with that, keep your document up. And I want you to write down your greatest success or something you were really proud of in a business setting. Just one thing that you were super successful, you're really proud of yourself in a business setting. Then I want you to write your greatest success or something you are proud of in a personal setting. And parents, you can't write your kids. And I'm going to caveat that because as we look at the mirror approach, a lot of us identify ourselves through being a parent. We identify ourselves through being career oriented and we identify ourselves being a parent. Guess what? Today's not about any of that. We're going to celebrate our wins and our successes, but I want you getting back to the root core of you. Who are you? You go into a business setting. You are a parent. You raise children. They are fantastic, lovely human beings. I have a mini me, totally get it. But that's not what today is about. And it's so great if you can not kill them by the time that they are 18, which is like a huge success in itself. But that's not about today. Today, again, comes back all to who you are. And we're going to try and really peel apart an onion at getting back to who you are so that you can understand exactly how you showcase yourself to the world. So one thing that you're proud of or your greatest success from a business standpoint, one success or something you're proud of from a personal setting, And those should be after your 2-minute list of your accomplishments. All right, so let's figure out who you are. If you've never taken a personality assessment, color assessment, no idea where you've been, but we're going to start through that. Today, we're going to talk through 3 that I hope you can at least have access to, or you will spend the time taking, because there's a lot of goodness in figuring these things out. So starting with, a lot of companies use strength finders to identify this. Any of my Berkeley people on, guarantee you've taken the strength finders. I'm going to actually revisit some of the stuff we've done with that. We're also going to talk about 16 personalities. I had never taken this assessment until recently and was absolutely fascinated by how this comes across from a personality standpoint. And this website, that if you do choose to go take this, gives you a lot of insight into how you relate to people, what your friendships are like, partnerships from a romantic setting. How are you in a business setting? How do you parent? Just gives you kind of a lot of interesting feedback that might be relative to what you're going through right now, or just give you some perspective on how people perceive you. Then we're going to look at the VIA character assessment, which thank you to Yvonne for bringing this to my attention. Fun story with this one, I didn't agree with it. And then at the very bottom of it, it says, this is how you unconsciously see yourself. So funny when it comes to this stuff. Then I'd also love to know, have you guys taken any other assessments in your career path or personal development that you would mind sharing? So if you've got any of those, please throw them into the chat so that we can all collectively continue to learn and grow together over the next 6 months of this masterclass series. So one of the things that I want to talk about before we dive into all the great stuff about yourself is the dark side. So there's this thing called the shadow self, which is something that we don't necessarily like to pay attention to, but is definitely necessary. And we'll dive more into this as we get into this masterclass series, but it's also understanding what makes you tick. Because as much as we have strengths, we do all have weaknesses, and I love calling them opportunity areas, but not all of them do we really want to enhance. And I'll explain this a little bit more when we get into the character assessment. There are some weaker traits that I do not care that they are weak. I understand that they're weak for me, but they're nothing that I care to focus on. And so you might find some similarities in that too. But when we talk about mirroring ourselves, like I know there are certain things that are going to set me off. I have a best friend who he says that within the first 10 seconds of talking to me, he knows what day we're going to have. And I always find that fascinating because I'm like, I don't realize that. And he's like, oh, I do. You call and I'm literally 10 seconds in, I know what kind of conversation it's going to be. So figuring out either 1, how do you identify that within yourself? Or 2, if you need to flip it to get it back into like a better positive light or figure out how to control this, taking that mirror approach is going to be helpful in doing so, because you're going to create by the end of this masterclass series, a toolbox to help you continue to move yourself forward. Now, the dark side's not always bad though. Sometimes you've got to wake yourself up to remind yourself why you're alive. And there are certain things like you can relate it to like the mama bear approach, where if you poke me, I will come back. Like there are pieces that will continue to emerge that aren't necessarily the most beautiful, but they're there, and they're there for protection. They're there to validate respect. There are things that are going to stay inside of you, but it's learning about what are those, being aware of them and understanding how to control them. Because, you know, as we age, controlling emotions is a huge issue. And I can tell you, I've been a very spunky, pugnacious kiddo since I was probably born. And I still, to this day, am working on controlling some of those emotions. But my emotions and my passion are what drive me and are what fuel who I am and how I present myself to the world. So understanding that it's not always a bad thing, but sometimes people don't receive it in the way that I intend to put it out there. So things to think about when we talk about this. So you might see some negatives that you don't like, but acknowledge it and then either figure out if it's something you care to address or you don't. So with that, we're going to get into Strength Finders part first. If you've not taken the Strength Finders before, fantastic assessment. I personally find it interesting. I believe there are some perspectives are going to tell you that these don't change. I'm going to show you that they do, but in an interesting capacity. So this is for all my Berkeley friends. So when I first came to Berkeley, this is something that they have as an assessment that we do with HR. I think it's fantastic. It shows you how to work with people. It's great. So right when I came, my top 5 for Strength Finders were the Achiever, Woo, Positivity, Competition, and Input. This is before any of the industry mind shifting things had started to go out into the work comp industry. So when we look at Woo, that had to be there. because I had not yet won people over, the winning others over, into understanding what kind of philosophy and mindset we really wanted to put out into this world. Then we look at like competition of understanding, like you've got to be number one. You've got to make sure that if we're going to put out something into the industry that's going to be game changing and different, like I'm going to win. My team's going to win with me too. Like we all have to collectively win. But in order to do that, I needed to solicit input from others to be into a winning team type scenario. So when we do the pre, we see that I've got achiever, woo, positivity, competition, and input. The post, after this is built, this is upon my exit of Berkeley. And I love the workers recovery unit and all of my Berkeley friends that are on. I love you guys to death. So happy you guys are all doing well and killing it. My post, achiever, still number one. Futuristic now, woo's gone because we've already established what needed to happen. Positivity, still number three. But now you see that it's shifted. And now you see strategic and learner come into play, which if you think about from the transition of where you're going along your career path, like when you're designing something, so we're going to just use my life as an example. I wanted to design completely game-changing things. On the carrier side, I wanted to design that workers recovery unit. On the TPA side, we've designed the Workers' Compensation Center of Excellence. Those things take a different mindset into looking into the future and how to strategize, partnerships, team building. How do you collaborate with people? And then being a lifelong learner at this point really took that shift. So instead of soliciting input and trying to figure out how do we do this, it shifted into what strategies do we shift into to grow? And so I find it interesting when we talk about this, when we look at Strength Finder, and if you've taken it, I challenge you to take it again and see if something has shifted and to see if that helps you depict in telling your story and understanding like, who are you, the why, the how, the what, and does it make sense with the timeline of your life? I saw in the chat, we've got some people that have completed their master's degrees recently and probably a few years ago. That's fantastic. Does that depict who you were in that time period? Also, if you're a parent, we're very different when they're little to when they're older. There's a lot of different things that we shift at our core to help ebb and flow with what life is doing with us at that moment. So we're going to take the two that did not change for me, and we're going to dive into them. So number one, the achiever. Okay, so when you just see the word achiever, you're like, yep, okay, achieve. Right? It kind of has a like positive spin to it. Read the description. Not necessarily. If any of you know me outside of work or in personal setting, this is me to a T. I need constant achievements. One of my friends last week described me as the chronic overachiever. It's absolutely correct. I will always get things done, achieve, achieve, achieve. I never feel validation. I never feel like I've done enough. So there's like a big loophole here into, okay, these are the people you want on your team because they're going to get it done. The problem is these people also seek this like weird validation that you can't get from achieving. And so it's an interesting concept. And I'll explain a little bit more here in a second, but it is like, we don't start every day at a level 10. We start every day at a level 0, and we've got to work our way up into those achieving moments to end up hitting that like level 10 that some people wake up hop out of bed. They've got this zest for life. I don't necessarily do that. I'm like, okay, what am I going to accomplish today? And I go through that list of what can I get done today? What can I check off my list? What can I do to help my team? How do I grow our organization? What am I going to do for myself? And it ends up becoming like an achievement list on a daily basis. And so understanding this of getting to like really dive in and peel apart that onion to understand why is this? So I'm an adopted kiddo. So my validation was always, I need to make sure I don't get sent back. After being somebody that was in a foster care system, I don't want to get sent back. And back then it was like all these like mind shifts of, I don't want to get sent back to the orphanage. I don't want to get sent back to another family. So if I keep achieving, maybe they won't send me back. Like it's a validation thing. The problem with this is that I didn't fix it at a young enough age to understand like what worth is and what value is, and really understanding that. So it has completely transitioned into a work dynamic where I know I have to have validation from a boss, from a peer, of something that makes me understand, yes, this was good, you did well. So I know that. So words of affirmation, if you're a love language person, huge thing for me. Hearing I'm proud of you, huge thing for me. You can ask my daughter, I tell her I'm proud of her every single day because it's words that I didn't hear. She doesn't need that, but I'm going to absolutely project on her all the stuff that I didn't get because it's just who I am. And so understanding that, diving into this achiever where there's a lot of great qualities, there's also a lot of subconscious stuff that's in there, and understanding exactly who I am at my core, and understanding that once you reach those accomplishments, okay, you get to a point. I have a ton of credentials. I have a doctorate. I teach, like I do a lot of stuff. And so that's where when you dive in and you peel apart this onion, so what makes me feel good? Like, what are those things that are going to make me feel like, hey, I can write this on my accomplishment list? Because the problem that I had in doing the accomplishment list is I didn't want to fill it out. I'm like, well, I mean, I did that, but was it really? And you start to question yourself, and that's not good. We're not supposed to do that. We're supposed to be thriving in a zestful, youthful excitement for life. And so understanding that these components have a positive and maybe a less than desirable side or a negative side, figuring out how to understand what it is. So I now own that. I know I'm a chronic overachiever. I know it's an issue. So I know that I have to put boundaries in place, not only with myself, but with the teams that I work with, where, for example, I don't email on weekends. I will always set them on a timer now, but I will never project my need to achieve onto somebody else, because that's a boundary now that I've had to establish for myself. So these are those areas where when you identify them and you understand that you're working with people that are in different dynamics and that people that are not always going to be the same way that you are, it's important to establish boundaries and make sure that they're agreed upon so that you can have a very positive, functioning, collaborative group to help everyone thrive and bloom and grow in whatever facility or whatever type organization that is, personally or professionally. I also, people, this is a question thing I get all the time. You do a lot. Do you ever burn out? Well, look here in the achiever, the energy. I can work long hours without burning out. Now, burnout does happen. I did this recently, but it is not something that comes naturally. Like I can go and go and go and go and go and go and go. Is it healthy? Probably not. But that's also, again, reestablishing boundaries to understand, okay, what do I need to fuel myself and what does that look like? So one of the other things that I get asked a lot is, oh, you travel a lot. Traveling completely energizes me. So I can go longer and harder when I know that I'm going to different places, because those places give me energy and it excites me to fuel me to keep going further. And so it's really trying to figure out what works for you and what doesn't. So I don't ever see this leaving, because I think it's so embedded into kind of my core existence that this will always be there. It's something I've always got to be aware of. And while it does have some really great attributes, it's got a lot of stuff around worth. And that is something that I will continue to just have to acknowledge and be aware that I didn't want that for my child to pass on to another generation. So things to think about as you look at these. So when we look at your strengths, or if you're going to go down these strength founders, like, okay, are some of these things true? Sometimes it's going to take a minute. It's going to take a minute, because I was like, no, achiever is great. I can achieve. I'm going to keep doing it. But at what point is it enough? And that's where it was really trying to take this. All right, when we look at a work-life balance, for example, like, what am I going to miss 50 years from now? What is life going to look like? What's my daughter's memories going to be? And so looking at things in that context or in that component, really understanding, all right, these are hard truths and they're not necessarily beautiful all the time. So what can you take away from it that you can help learn, develop, grow, and then you can pass it on to someone else in that capacity to just kind of help push them along as well. So positivity was another one that just stayed. I am the eternal optimist, always will be. There's always something good. I think my phrase this year has been, if it's not cancer, we can probably fix it. And so I've had that conversation a lot with teammates, with organizations, and especially with my daughter. Whatever happens in life, we laugh first, and then we make a strategic plan to move forward. Because again, if it's not cancer, we can probably fix it. There's always a way. You might not be able to see it right away, but keep going as far as you can. And when you get there, you'll see the next step. So when we look at this, I do love to smile. I love to spread positivity. This has been since I was very, very, very little. And a story that I shared on In Touch was when I was 3 years old. It was my first time acting and being on stage. which, executive presence can come early apparently. But I walked out on stage. I'm supposed to be a radish. I'm supposed to be a radish in a vegetable garden. So we're supposed to walk out and just, you take a little curtsy and you walk out and go stand in the vegetable garden. Not me, not Claire, not 3-year-old Claire. I walk out and I say, I am Cecilia Radish. And I make a huge thing with my hands. I stomp my foot down and it is like, I am here in this pink and white dress that is polka dot on top and tight, and then very frilly pink ruffles. And it is like, oh my goodness. My aunt is an opera singer, and this is like her favorite story to tell, because even though I'm not a blood relative, she's like, oh, she was born into this like presence family. But those are things that are like, if you're going to be here, you're going to be positive, you're going to be out there. Like, this is something that I also believe is innate to my core. And so when I look back, and as you take this time to like reflect on, go back and look at moments in your life where you're like, okay, energy, optimism. Like I wrote a thing on my wall when I was a kiddo that was like, most smiles are started by another smile, be the smile. It's like 7. Like, this stuff is wired into us in a way that it's pretty cool to see how it just unfolds as we get older. Sometimes we forget that that person exists. So again, take the time, peel away the onion, and let's see what's still there. So as we look, all right, I like the positivity one. I can accept that. The achiever one took a while, but I'm finally there. I understand it. And now when I work with teams, I'm like, all right, I've got boundaries. We have to have boundaries. Positivity. You know what? If you're going to bring me your problems, I will find you a silver lining, which I will tell you makes people not want to come to me with their problems, because we will find a solution, or I will have you try and look at it in a different way. So that's Strength Finders. If you've taken it, awesome. Take it again, see if something shifted, or dive into the ones that you have. Do these actually make sense to you? And do you understand both sides of the coin on them? So next, personality assessment. I had never done one of these before. I've done the color and I've done some of those, which was kind of interesting, but this one's great. So it's 16 personalities. It is free. You can go to 16personalities.com and take this. If you're going to take it while we're talking today, go for it. It takes about 10 minutes, but this will give you a baseline kind of where you're at. And this one I think has been true throughout my whole life, but it is very fascinating to end up understanding exactly what components of your life fit into your personality. So this one takes some reflection, get your baseline, answer honestly, answer truthfully, and answer with that first gut instinct. I tend to like to meditate before I take any of these assessments, so my mind is clear. And then it is gut instinct, take that intuition, rock and roll, answer it, and go. So with that, I ended up being an ENFJ-A. So tons of letters, had no idea what it meant, but did some research, figured out that I follow intuition and feeling. I'm a huge energy person. I think that it has become more and more evident the more I've come out of the pandemic. And I know we're still kind of in the pandemic, but for all intents and purposes, being around people again, I am either pulled or pushed away from people's energy. And I will distance myself from you if I feel like you do not have a solid energy that I want to be around. That is my intuition and my feelings of understanding who I am and what I perceive off of other people. So understanding that was like, oh, okay, so that's kind of a personality thing too. But I'm known for empathy, diplomatic skills, and passionate idealism. So if any of you have known me in the work comp industry, I'm incredibly empathic towards injured workers and to our teams that actually work with the injured workers. Diplomatic skills, yep, we're right there. And a passionate idealism. Okay, all right, I'm sold. So then we go into, let's dive into like what the letters mean. So it ended up being that I'm a protagonist, which kind of made me laugh. But so very extroverted, intuitive, feeling and judging, warm, loving, helping others, very strong ideals and values. If you've ever worked with me or we ever do encounter each other from a business standpoint, values are important to me. Everything that we do in life, we have our own personal mission, vision, and values. I've said this recently, and I will say this probably till the end of time. If your personal mission, vision, and values do not align with the organizations in which you put yourself in, whether it be in a philanthropic standpoint or from a business standpoint, it's not going to be in alignment. There is something beautiful that happens when your mission, vision, values, purpose, all are in alignment in your personal life, who you are at your core, and in your business life. It makes things flow and it makes them easy. It makes people love coming to work, understanding what their meaningful, purpose-driven occupation is, because it drives meaningful, effective change. So it's always important to me to understand, like, what is an organization's mission? Do the values align with what I want to do and how I see myself, or where I would like to become? And I think that that's something that we don't give enough value for. And so when you're interviewing with organizations, or you're taking a look internally at your own organization, or anything that you're going to start or be a part of, take a look at that, because that will, one, help you with the alignment of what your whole core being is, as well as it makes it so much easier to use like creativity and move forward when you are really practicing your truth and standing in it at all times of the day. The other part of the personality assessment that I learned is that I have an A. I am assertive. Random. Bet no one saw that one coming. So I do feel myself with more confidence. The confidence piece, I think I did not realize has always been there, but I own the onion layers. And there's not a lot of things that people can say that are actually going to hurt me at this point in life. Some of the things that I got when I was younger, I got called Orphan Annie. And literally, if you can say that to me and I'm like, okay, what's next? There's a lot of things that when we talk about confidence, I think it's owning all of the stuff. So everything that you're going to learn about yourself through these methods that we're talking about today, it's just owning it and figuring out a way that you can use it to help better society, better people, better anyone that interacts with you, and just owning it. Being able to empathize with what are your strengths and weaknesses. And we're going to go through some of my weaknesses today too. But with that, it's just kind of owning all of it and understanding that none of us are perfect. We're all perfectly flawed in ways that make each of us unique and beautiful. And so the more that you are able to understand yourself and what makes you tick, what makes you thrive, what makes you happy, that is where your superpower comes in. So next, Yvonne, thank you for this. So I originally took this and was like, no, wrong. Where did this come from? It's completely wrong. Don't agree with it. And then Yvonne said, well, keep reading. So when you read at the bottom, it's about how you perceive yourself. And so I thought that was quite comical for me. So it's going to give you an assessment of 24 characteristics. They are your positive qualities, and they define how you are in your unique identity. And so with that, this one takes a little bit more time. Again, I really hope that you take this. I think it's really enlightening to learn about yourselves. I know like Beth and Kimberly and some other people were also there. They're on my screen right now, so that's why I called on them, have taken this. And I think they might have been a little bit more relating. I wanted to say, no, it was wrong. So here's why. It's probably right, by the way. My top 5, how do I view myself? Number 1, creativity. So I have a dance background, but I also don't consider that creative. When I think of creativity, I think of art. Like I think of Mari's background, where it's like this gorgeous color array of flowers and whatnot. I did not realize that I've ever seen myself as a creative. But the more that I wanted to dive into things and really take into account for how creativity could be different. It could be, how do you design organizations? How do you design team structures? How do I design classes that I'm going to teach at the university? And looking at creativity in a different lens, I was like, oh, okay, I can buy into that. But originally I was like, no, I'm not creative. I can't do art projects. So think about things in a different lens when you're going through this. Love of learning. That one, again, reflected in the strength finders. Yeah, lifelong learner. Gratitude, absolutely. I think a lot of it stems from my upbringing, but gratitude's always been a pretty big component. And so I'm not surprised that that showed up as a characteristic. And then hope, having that eternal optimism also kind of shines through. And number 5, bravery. Yes, I think that we can fully say that that one is a characteristic. So when you take this, I want you to then compare it to some of the other assessments that you've done for yourself. And I say that because you're going to see similarities, because this is you to your core. So how do these overlap? So when we look at it, like lover of learning, that came up from the VIA character assessment. Well, it also came up in strength finders as a learner. So that makes sense. Then we look at gratitude and positivity, or hope, totally comes into alignment there as well. And then bravery, I'm going to assimilate with assertive from the personality assessment. I'm like, okay, all right, I'm buying into this stuff now. What can I learn? So I told you we have to look at both sides of the coin. So when we look at the 24 characteristics, I looked at the bottom 5 and was like, don't care. So this is what I find very interesting. There are things that are going to separate us, not only from what our strengths and if we want to call them weaknesses or opportunity areas are, but in also how we assimilate with other people. So from a judgment, forgiveness, teamwork, self-regulation, and prudence standpoint, okay, so those are low. I don't know that I necessarily want to really focus on that. So teamwork was an interesting one to me because I love building teams. I love bringing people together and collaborating. But from a teamwork standpoint, I hate participating when I'm in a group setting. And I'm going to go back to college for this. So when I was getting my master's, I hated being put into group projects because I'm going to end up doing it all. I know I'm going to work harder than the other people because hello, achiever, it's never going to be good enough unless I finish it. So this is where when you look at things that are in that weaknesses category, for lack of a better word on that, understanding it. So I understand that I love collaborating in a team. I love being able to figure out what everyone's strength is. How do we come together? How do we help one another? But in the back of my mind, I always think of teamwork as going back to college and working in those projects where you've always got that one person who doesn't want to pull their weight. And so it helps me gain perspective on what does that mean for me. Self-regulation, again, here comes that achiever. I will burn until I am burned out. So I understand that self-regulation is something I have to focus on. Again, putting in boundaries, looking at things in that kind of scope. Forgiveness, that one I don't know that I really care to focus on either, because again, a lot of it comes back from that background of getting burned. And if you know anyone that's been a foster to adopt, there's just a different nature that comes in with trust and boundaries and transparency in those kind of capacities. So again, those are the types of things that I understand. I just might not put as much work into trying to enhance those because I understand the rationale behind why those are low for me. So when you get yours and you're looking at these, pay attention to these too and see, there's always the wonderful mix in the middle. But the bottom ones, I think, will also tell you a story that help you understand if that's something like, do you really care to strengthen those? Or would you rather focus your energy on the things that you are doing fantastic at? There are 2 different philosophies behind this. Sometimes it's like, well, you can be really good at these things. All right, so let's enhance that. Or do you want to spend time and kind of focus on those less strong characteristics? Choice is yours in this type of scenario. Again, you're going to have different philosophies behind this. I can just tell you that I'm okay with where I'm at on these. So maybe you will be too, or there's something that you want to get some perspective in. There is also a children's version of the VIA character finder or character identifiers. So if you would like to see where your children lie, that is also available as well. And I think that is also something when you're looking at the strengths and weaknesses, like who is your child now at this present moment? Is there anything that you want to help them with, etc.? Things like that. So you can dive into this. There's a lot of cool stuff in there, a lot more about what each mean and how you perceive yourself as well as how you work with others. So, all right, that's enough about me. I just wanted to give you some examples. So now we're going to dig in to you. And I would love to make this very interactive. So these questions are all going to be, Samantha can email this out at the end. So you do not need to write drastically right now, but we're going to go through about 20 questions that I want you to try and take time over the next couple weeks before we meet again and really figure out what this means to you. And we're going to go through why the importance behind each question, and then I will turn this over to you guys. So let's dig in. When we talk about what activities do you do for yourself, this is imperative. What do you do for yourself? And if anyone wants to throw something in the chat, I want to hear it. I don't want to hear about what you do to keep yourself healthy for your family. I want to know what you do that is purely and selfishly for you. It doesn't benefit anyone else. It is selfish and it is all for you. And if I'm going to guess, this is going to be hard for people to think about because while like keeping ourselves healthy is great for us, usually we aren't doing it for ourselves. I had a nice hard truth with a doctor this morning that was like, you're going to need to lose 20 pounds. I'm like, yes, that sounds great. Super excited. But now I got to do that for me because it's not on anyone else. It's some other stuff. And that's really fun to hear. But so think bigger than this. I want to know what you do that is awesome from a standpoint of like, I like to go hiking by myself I don't take anything with me. I just like to go hike, or I like to spend time reading. Any activity that you do for yourself. These are those little re-energizers that help burst your energy, even when you don't realize it. Music is one of the most powerful, easy ways to snap yourself into a good mood or a productive mindset. And probably one of the things that I utilize the least, but also a very easy thing to do. So then when do you find yourself the happiest? And I say happiest versus productive or engaged or present. When do you find yourself the happiest? What are you doing? What does it look like? Do you get lost in the moment? I know Mari has talked about she has a tea ritual that she does every morning. That's a happy place. So can you create these moments or these elements of happy, even if it's just for a few seconds each day, that are purely for yourself, that make you feel amazing in all essence of your being? Then what does the ideal day look like for you? If you had a day where you could go anywhere and do anything, who would you be with? What would it look like? What does an ideal day look for you? Maren, since you put this out on LinkedIn, I'm actually going to call on you for this. You posted, I took a day of PTO last week because I felt like it. Maren, what did you do with your day? What was that ideal day for you?
It was my first installment of a monthly PTO day that I scheduled on my calendar this year. So
Yes.
I took my kids to school. I went and got gas, and then I came home and I took a really long shower. I took forever and a day to get ready because I was not interrupted by anybody. So I took my time. Then after I was all ready, I took a nap until I woke up. I didn't set an alarm. And then I watched a movie that I've been wanting to watch. And then I went shopping for the last little bit of time that I had.
I love that. Okay, so we talked about boundaries. I've been talking about boundaries. One of the things, since I know that I'm an achiever, and Maren, you just said it, you put in that one PTO day a month. Yes, I'm doing something similar. I want one Friday a month. I'm taking one quarterly trip personally, and I'm taking a week for philanthropy, and I'm taking a week for vacation with my kiddo. But those things, like what Maren talked about, and doing, like, actually, that's putting a boundary in place. I am taking one day a month for myself. Because if you don't, the time gets eaten up. And you know what, Maren, that day sounded fantastic. And I saw it created a ton of traction on LinkedIn, because good for you. The amount of responses that were like, oh, great idea. Good for you. And it started like a movement on this. I think it's imperative. So when we talk about like what your ideal day looks like, then go do it. If it's something that's simple like that, like I'm going to take a crazy long shower, take forever to get ready, and I'm going to nap, and I'm not going to set an alarm. That would be amazing. Actually, that sounds wonderful. But those are the things, like, what would you do for yourself? Then what are those moments that set your soul on fire? There are those moments. And this is where a lot of times, this is where I'm going to have to ask you, separate out the parent stuff, because the parent stuff, those moments when you get to see your child come into themselves, or like my daughter's really active in show choir right now, and I got to watch her just blossom this past Friday. That's a moment that sets my soul on fire. But I'm not talking about that. This is the mirror approach, where we're looking at you. You are looking at you, and I want to know what it is for you that creates that internal moment, like what you feel for your children, or you feel for your spouse or your friends when you want to celebrate them. What is that moment like? And this may take some time to think about. And I'm a kinesthetic processor, so I like to work out, and that's how I work through things. I end up finding like clarity through it, and that's where I find a lot of my answers. But then also, what is your word? And I know a lot of us talk about what is our word for the year, and we all have like an intentional word. So if you've got a word for the year, please feel free to throw it in the chat, because it gives us some type of focus. My word that I didn't even think about, so this year my word has been evolve, because I'm ready to spread some rings and go try something new in life. Like I'm just ready to evolve into the next phase of whatever that looks like. But it's also a word that I didn't think about is respect. I also have a 13-year-old daughter, so that might give you where the respect thing is coming from, but also respecting myself, respecting with boundaries. A lot of the reflection from, the achiever standpoint of the burnout and whatnot, like I've got to start respecting myself in the fact that I have completely beat up my body over the years. I burned myself out in a lot of ways. So what does respect look like for me? And then what does respect look like for other people? So how do we teach people how to respect us and how to treat us. So what messaging or what have I done to get people to interact with me in the ways that they do? And really looking at that from my own self standpoint. So when I look at my word, and not my word for the year, but my word right now for where I'm at, respect. Word for the year, evolve. You might be able to look at something like that too. Like, what is your word? Like, what's your why? Looking at things in those capacities, because the more that you can dig in to understand why your behavior is the way it is, or what is fueling that, you can use that as fire and passion to really get yourself going in the direction that you want, or to get you into that next chapter of whatever's coming next. Now we're going to get deeper. So this, again, you do not have to write all this stuff down right now. These are just the things that I want to prompt you to think about as you dive into this mirror approach. Because if you come along this journey for the next 6 or 5 more sessions after today, you're going to have a really clear understanding of who you are and understanding your purpose and your desires and what you bring to the table, so that whatever's coming your way or whatever you want out of life, this gives you the fortitude and that passion to get to understand, I understand this is what I need to do to get here. This is how I interact with people. Okay, I understand that when I'm sitting in a meeting or I'm collaborating on a project, or if I want to take on something else, I need to be aware of these things within myself. So next thing, what does success mean to you? And I asked that especially from like my achiever standpoint. I couldn't answer this either, which is a very okay, so how do you know? How do you know when enough is enough? What does enough look like? So thinking about what success means to you. Is there a fear or a professional challenge that keeps you up at night? So when I was finishing my doctorate, I had a pretty, there's a big lull that comes after finishing something like that. Like, you've been working on this project for 5 years, countless days, countless nights. That last couple months is intense. I think it was maybe getting 4 hours of sleep a night, drinking coffee to wake up, drinking wine to go to bed, not healthy at all. Ended up with a gallbladder issue. So that was super fun. But the thing I was afraid of was finishing it, because once you're finished with it, what's next? What comes next? I've known this as my cadence. I've known this as where I spend my energy for 5 years. So the success of finishing it was absolutely terrifying. And it's one of those things that we talk about, we have fears of failure. A lot of people have fears of success too, because then what happens? How do you embrace it? How do you feel afterwards? Okay, so I finally achieved these goals, then what comes next? So when you think about what is the fear or professional challenge, it might be something completely that you think is, well, it couldn't be a successful thing. Yeah, it absolutely can. Because sometimes we will put roadblocks ahead, or we will find ways. It's kind of like the procrastination. You want me to clean, the best way for me to clean my house is to give me a deadline. I will find everything in my house that needs to be cleaned, because that's got to get done before I submit an article to Mari. So it's kind of crazy how we will put barriers in front of ourselves when really just dig in and do it. So as we get deeper, these are the things that I want you to think about. Then during moments of self-doubt and adversity, how do you build yourself back up? I'm going to go back to when I was in the doctoral program. I would cry in my bathtub towards the end because it was so exhausting. But this is where you formulate that tribe. You find that board of directors, and you find those people that can help you help yourself. Where I have a very good friend that just moved to Atlanta, and I was like, hey, I've got a couple of tough weeks coming up. And she's like, yeah, so get to it, hit the ground running, and you go. And it was just those words, hearing it from her versus myself, that really were all right, she's right, nose to the grindstone, time to go. So think about that. How do you build yourself back up, especially if nobody's around? Because at some point you have to learn to fix yourself when people aren't there. And what mistakes have you had to learn the most that led you to success? We've all made them. I've failed more times than I could ever count, but it's always been great. And this is where I give a throw out to Mike Moorhead, one of our workers recovery unit specialists at Continental Western, where he always said, it's not failure, it's just a first attempt in learning, FAIL. And I love Mike for that. And I think of it often because it's really true. It's all right, okay, it didn't work this way. Well, we at least moved the needle forward. So let's try it a different way. We might fail again, but at least we're getting closer to what we need to achieve. And then what's the biggest sacrifice you've made in business? I will tell you, this is not necessarily a proud moment, but there are times where I have sacrificed my health. I've sacrificed my mental well-being. And that's the kind of stuff that can't be sacrificed. So when we look at putting boundaries in place. What does self-care look like? What does your authentic self need to thrive and be successful? Take a look at the sacrifices that you've made along the way, because there's the skeletons in the closet, there's the dead bodies on the floor. We've all sacrificed things to be where we are right here, right now. And so owning what that is for you, and I'm not asking anyone to share, but think about that from that context of understanding what that looks like. So again, these questions will come out to you. I'm just going to get through these. So now I want you, after we've gotten through some hard truths, we dug deep, and we dug deeper. Now I want you to reflect back to kiddo. Let's go back to like the happy kid stuff. What did you want to be when you grew up? I wanted to be an attorney. I wanted to be a family lawyer and a senator, because I wanted to make the laws and regulations easier for children going through the foster care system. I relate a lot of the foster care system to the work comp system. And so while I did not become an attorney, still could be a senator, a lot of what I wanted to do as a kid, I did get to do as an adult. I did get to help people try and navigate a system that's not desirable for them. So when you look back and you look at what you wanted to be as a child, reframe it into what you've done and look at it to see if you really, like, when you look at your purpose and your meaning and your desire for what you want out of life, a lot of times it was there all along. I mean, Cecilia Radish, when she wanted to be an attorney, I mean, she's there, she's still there. It's just, how do you look at it and how do you use that as fortitude to move forward? So who do you look up to today? I'm going to use Betty White right now because, you know, she just passed. She just had her birthday, 100 years old, fantastic woman. She attributed her success to kindness. And this kindness is such an interesting concept because it's something that's lacking so much, especially with everything going on in the pandemic. Crazy that kindness is one of the things that was the first to go out the door. So figure out somebody that you look up to and why. What characteristics do they have that you would like to also attribute to yourself? Figure out your characteristics. When you look at your VIA character survey, which characteristic are you most proud of and why? And take that into account and feel that for a moment. What is your personal or professional motto? Mine is, I'm here to make good things happen for people. And that's personally, professionally, in a philanthropic standpoint, with my child, etc. I'm here to make good things happen for people. What's yours? And knowing what you know now, what would you have done differently? Not to go back and think, oh, I should have done it this way, but to learn. Okay, if I knew this now, I would do it this way, and use it as a propeller to move forward. But the history lessons that are there help us to even get way beyond what we think our scope could be in the future. And then smile. These are the things, like, this is where, all right, I've dug deep, I've reflected, I dug deeper, I went back, I looked through all the yucky stuff. Now is the time to smile. What's the first thing that you do every morning to start your day on the right foot? I'm a meditator. It's my thing. I do it right even before I get out of bed. I'm going to laugh here in a second before I say this. I believe Mari does bed yoga.
It's awesome.
It's a thing. Don't let your mind go into a naughty place. It is a thing. If you have back pain in the morning or hip pain or whatnot, awesome. I'm sure Mari can provide those resources as well. Then what is the favorite thing about your workspace? If you work in a space that you do not love, find something to make yourself happy in this space. Then what is your favorite thing to come home to after a long day or to exit out of your office? Like, what is something that is so awesome? And if you don't have one, find something. And then if you were magically given 3 more hours of your day, what would you do with them? I love that Maren didn't set an alarm clock. I would absolutely do that. I'm going to steal that. And then, of course, what tool, object, or ritual could you not live without in your day? So if you commute, do you have something that you do? Do you listen to podcasts? Do you listen to music? Do you dance it out? Whatever that is, finding something that makes each day special for you. And so with that, that is all your homework, just a couple things. And I will see you back here February 16th as we continue this along into taking everything that you're going to learn from this. And then we're going to talk about how you drive that into your authentic self. So with that, Mari, do we have any time for questions?
Let me see. I'm just so into the conversation. It's 1 o'clock. It's 1:01. So no, but we have winners of our kindness challenge because we have 10. And I have, where is my little, gosh, I've been taking notes and I haven't been really paying attention because this class, I feel like I was in therapy. So much. It's like I just went through therapy and I'm like still trying to process everything. Okay, so let's see here. We get to pick 10 people that attended this class, and guys, I'm really sorry because I was so into the class that I don't have the 10 people. So any ideas on how we can choose 10, Claire, quickly before people, because I was just so focused.
All right, I'll scroll through and just call out names. How's that? First
Oh my
names, let
God.
me see. All right.
10.
Alla's the waiter.
Ala,
Yep. Cindy Housel.
Cindy,
Gina Holt.
Gina Holt.
Tandeka.
and
I'm not going for the last name on this one, girl. I got your first name down. We're good.
Woohoo! Non vete.
Thank you. Veronica Brooks.
Veronica Brooks.
Woohoo!
Woo! Maren, I totally just stopped on you, but you also participated. So thank you for your help on that. How many
Thank
is that,
you.
Mari?
Yes, we're at 7.
Okay. And let's go. I'm going up. And Chris, I cannot say it. Zatoka? Chris Zatoka?
Okay, got it.
Scrolling down. Let's go. Pamela Seiler.
Pamela Seiler.
And the last one. Scrolling, not looking. Kevin Melkert.
Kevin, and one more.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
What was the last name for Kevin? Kevin?
Melkert?
Okay. Well, the last one.
Last one. Stephanie Bazal. And I think I just butchered that. And Stephanie, do not kill me. I know I will see you here shortly.
If your name was called, I put my email on the chat. I need you to email me so that I can send you your gift card. It'll be an electronic gift card, and also the instructions. Please pay it forward. Follow the instructions so that we can continue the ripple effect and continue to spread kindness, right, throughout the entire workers' compensation industry and beyond. It doesn't have to be a colleague. It can be a friend, a neighbor, but we want to kind of keep pushing it through our industry as well. So don't forget, email me. It's on the chat. And join in touch if you haven't already.
And with that, we will see you back here February 16th. This has been recorded, so if you need to come back and kind of do some reflection, you will have the opportunity to do so. It will be posted in the InTouch vault. You do need to be a member of InTouch, so sign up at intouchwc.com. And with that, if you guys have questions or you have anything or want to share anything, please reach out. I am happy to be a part of this. We'll tell you this masterclass series is also being run through a group of students that I'm excited to see how they do as well. And so really, I hope that you guys are able to take this and make 2022 your year for you. So with that, thank you very much, Mari. Thank you to InTouch. Very thankful to be here.
Thank
Have
you.
a fantastic day, you guys.
Thank you.
Thank